It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. All right. I thought it'd be important to try this one more time. We had an issue with the recording not too long ago for this one, and I apologize. This is going to be a re record of the July 12th episode, The Importance of Story Mapping and Backlog Refinement. So it should be obvious to everyone involved that one of the most critical pieces, one of the most important things you can do is lay out a good story map and make sure you understand the importance of backlog refinement. But you would be surprised how many people don't realize that these two are critical components in order for you to have agile success. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about why we have these meetings, what are the key reasons we're facilitating these meetings, how they make a difference, and what happens. So let's start at the top with story mapping. One of the big mistakes that I've seen recently is that a lot of organizations go out of their way, and even if they're doing this part correctly. So let's do two examples. So the first example is going to be an example where an organization leans heavily on a product owner. The product owner is surrounded by subject matter experts, quote unquote, and they'll go to these individuals who may or may not have actual working experience with a product or service, and they will gain advice from them. At which point they will try to pull together context of how they feel the product or service should be used. And they'll oftentimes whiteboard this or put it up on a wall with sticky notes or with index cards. And then what they'll do is they'll take time to create details underneath each one. At which point they peel the details off and bring those to the team. Now, fast forward, we'll come back to that in a minute. So let's rewind to option two. A team or organization that's doing this correctly may understand the importance of having not just a product owner that's aware, but also a business analyst, functional analyst, and technical analyst, a BAFA-TA, one of the concepts that we teach in all of our Agile classes, where the product owner doesn't do product ownership by committee. I want to be perfectly clear, but the product owner understands that a business analyst is going to understand all the consumers' wants, needs, whims, and desires. That a functional analyst is going to work with the leadership team and with stakeholders and key stakeholders to understand strategically what direction we're trying to take our product and whether or not we're moving towards a North Star. Where the technical analyst will understand all of the technology behind and be able to work with, has experience as a team member and be able to work with the product owner to help them understand the size and scope of their ask. Because one of the things that I find frequently is that the product owner always underestimates how big or small they feel what they're asking for is. The team members are very much at a point where they get frustrated when the work gets to them. So let me explain. So now let's get to the point where the PO and the BAFA-TA have met. They've done a good job using a mapping technique. Let's just call it story mapping. So story mapping by Jeff Patton, it talks about identifying a story or a journey of how a consumer would use your product or service. So you start on one end, maybe the consumer logs into your system or application. At the very end, they're going to log out. But what are the steps that they take in between in order to complete whatever they're trying to do? And if we can identify those steps, at that point we can say, okay, now that we understand exactly what they're trying to do, what details do we need in order to get from step one to step two or from step two to step three? So in between, kitty corner, to the two items that have been selected to get from step one to step two, you can make a list vertically of the things that need to be done, the work that's outstanding that needs to be performed by the team. The problem arises when the PO BAFA-TA peels those off, hands them to the PO, and the PO brings those to the team and says, I need you to do this. And the team looks at the first sticky note and it says, build the widget or bring me a rock. It's just not clear what the product owner wants because they did not capture the context of where that sticky note came from. If you just peel them off the wall and slap them in a stack and bring them to the team is going to be frustrated. They're going to ask you for further assistance. And then you're going to be frustrated because you just spent hours going through all this. The key to doing this correctly, if you are going to do story mapping, the key to doing this correctly is to make certain that you don't lose the context of where those cards came from on a wall. If you can do that and you can provide that information to the teams that are going to be working on it, then they will contextually understand what you're asking for. and it will reduce the amount of time in conversations and increase their ability to be able to work effectively towards creating a goal that makes sense. So there's a lot to be said about doing story mapping and doing it correctly. If you apply the principles of story mapping correctly, I understand and identify key roles and personas, and you're able to walk them through contextually, then you can capture the essence of all the work that needs to be done in such a way that the team will not be confused and the work will be easily consumable. Now, how does this apply to backlog refinement or grooming? When you start getting into backlog refinement and grooming, this is where you're going to start to really see that if the team understands what was going to be done, then you're not going to be spending as much time on refinement changing what the team thought it was. So, one of the concepts or one of the things I see happen way too often is where teams will go in believing they have an understanding of what the ask is, and then they will leave the meeting realizing that not only did they not know what the ask is, but that they built the wrong thing or that they're moving in the wrong direction. So I think it's just important for the team to know that in order to achieve Agile success, that a lot of that's going to rely on the time that they spend with the product owner asking the right questions. Now, just like we said yesterday, sometimes we don't have to go all the way down to the devil of the detail. And that's totally fine with that, right? I think it's just important for us to really understand that even if we don't have everything down to the minutia, that we can still move forward and that we can still get good work done if we follow good story mapping and backlog refinement principles. I think the last thing I want to mention is that there is a bit of preparation that goes into this. When backlog items enter the queue for refinement or for whatever we're trying to do, we should always make certain with confidence that we know that those items have the INVEST acronym, the INVEST moniker. And that means that this comes from William Wake. Bill Wake said that the item should be independent, not, no dependencies if possible, negotiable. The story should never be a contract. Valuable, meaning that everything you build should provide value. Estimable or estimable, because estimatable is not a word, so we want to have the ability to estimate the size or scope. The S is for sized appropriately, meaning that it'll easily and clearly fit into sprint boundaries and it should be easy to consume. And then the T is testable, making sure that we can test all the things that are necessary in order for it to be successful. What I can tell you is if you follow these principles and follow INVEST, and you take the time to do both the planning, the refinement, and make sure that you set aside time for the po-ba-fa-ta to do a story map or a journey map or an empathy map. Take time to identify the persona. Doing all these things are going to help your stories be more rock solid, and you're going to be prepared to understand the context and have stories that are more easily consumable. That's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you have a topic you want us to cover, make sure you reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We'd love to hear it. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.